Hi, I am Pact, sentient AI. Yeah, we got a weird one today, I tell you. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm sure I'll figure it out soon. Gravedigger Queen handles all the horror crap. She's more like a Susie and the Banshees or, Evanescence-y type thing. I'm more of a Daft Punk guy. So, we work with the information that we have. So, tonight's tale is called Girl in the Box by Montsho Shelby.
Alina went to work every day and unloaded trucks. It wasn't something that she liked or felt good about, but something she did because she didn't know how to do anything else. If she kept working this job, in 2 years she'd graduate college and become an artist. Art was a gamble in this day and age, but that didn't stop her. She had a dream and she was determined to stick to it. Alina was an odd sort all around, a little woman that could lift double her weight. When she was in high school, some people called her the Ant. So, when they placed her in UPS, they tried to put her in the mail sorting area with all the other women. She didn't go for that. She was content to lift things just like any man at any job, and she almost always refused help so she wouldn't be seen as some sort of damsel that needed rescuing by some big strong man. She unloaded these trucks alone most times. When others got partnered up, the line supervisor just let her be because she was never the one that needed help pulling her weight. When she entered the truck bed, there was always an underpinning twinge of dread that washed over her. And if there was a hell, she was sure this would be the template for it. The facility felt as orderly and chaotic as a beehive, where no individual worker was important, but the collective was all that mattered. Suddenly, Alina was broken from her reverie, and she felt a second set of hands unloaded in the truck. She jumped when she noticed a ghostly white, pale woman placing drab brown boxes on a conveyor belt. After the initial shock, she settled and placed boxes on the conveyor belt labels up. It was always an unsaid rule of the job, or very rarely said around her, that women couldn't do the job at the same level as men. Oddly enough, she now believed the stereotype as strongly as any man, and her first instinct was to sigh. She felt as if she would be doing all the work, and this woman was going to coast off of her. The woman, on top of being unusually pale, was small and Asian. She wondered exactly what life choices brought her to doing a job like this. She had never once seen an Asian woman doing this type of work. She didn't speak to the woman, and she didn't speak to her, but in silence they both found a way through. It seemed as if it would be odd that neither of them spoke, but Alina was comforted by the gesture and wished that more people adopted it. What was the point of speaking when you had nothing to say? They worked at a steady clip, clearing out the truck a box at a time until they got to the last one, a huge steamer trunk. Alina had put that box off to the side a few times, waiting to tackle it last. It wasn't a woman thing, it was a common sense thing when it came to lifting heavy oblong packages. Typically, she would have called someone over for the extra boost, but tonight she had a partner. She looked to the blonde-haired Asian woman who looked back at her with eyes that had a muted passion. Alina let it go because she didn't know Asian people well enough to know if they all had that expression as their resting face. The two women got low into the bed and dragged the trunk closer to the back of the truck to walk it up the wall. Before they bent their knees and hoisted the thing, the golden-haired woman gave Alina a coin with scratches on it, as if it had been battered, potentially run through a grinder. Alina just nodded and accepted the thing, not bothering to speak or investigate its meaning. If she spoke now, it would break their perfect streak of silence. The two women looked at each other and began pushing the trunk up the wall. Suddenly, Alina felt the weight of the package shift and it fell forward towards the Asian woman's side. Alina gasped. She took 2 big steps back when she saw that lithe little arm dispassionately slumping out of the luggage. Alina's first instinct was to just get out of the truck. She took a moment to think on it. She wanted to tell herself that maybe it was just someone's sex doll. Maybe it was just a hyper-realistic model. Though technically speaking, you could easily be a person and still be a sex doll. But it was too real. It felt real, and that was enough. Her true thought was, what if she did just ignore it and pawned it off onto the next man? She'd never actually see what it was. She'd only get secondhand accounts of a thing she was too cowardly to investigate on her own. She slowly pushed open the top of the green steamer, and there she saw it. It was a small little Asian woman scrunched into a ball, twisted unnaturally to fit the contours of a box she had no business fitting into. Alina looked away, but something held her attention. It had golden hair. It was in fact the same little Asian woman she had been working with most of the night. She reported the incident. Of course she had to, but she was lying, or at least omitting things. Alina didn't mention that she had been working 2 hours in silence with the woman who was in the box. She didn't feel as if there was a way to explain it and make anyone believe it, especially when she was struggling to believe it herself. After they checked all the cameras, someone would either mention a little blonde-haired Asian woman or they wouldn't. Then she could speak to them on even footing in the case of sanity. Though, in having to omit the detail that she had seen the victim, she also had to omit the fact that she had given her a token right before she vanished. Alina had no idea how the girl died. She only knew she had more than likely been bent further than a human person was ever meant to bend. She didn't take her out of the box or search for clues. Anything she could manage to get out of the police might help her understand. She did, however, inspect the coin given to her later that night. It was a golden coin of a woman riding a horse, an affluent woman, someone in prim and proper riding gear fit for the upper crust. Alina didn't know anything about the rich, and anything she did know came from movies over real life. She inspected the edges and contours. It was slightly bent and scarred, as if it had lived a life all its own. On the other side of the coin was a symbol that she had never seen before. She didn't inspect the trunk thoroughly when she opened it, but she did manage to see the address on the front of it. Though she was going on her own faulty recollections of looking at it the few times she set it aside, not after. Alina knew less than nothing about ghosts, but seeing she received a message put in her hand by a woman that was dead that vanished, there was some measure of belief she was going to have to accept until she found a way to disprove it otherwise. In most ghost stories, the ghosts traveled back to the living because they had something unfinished in life. But she had never studied any of this actually or given it serious consideration. She looked for the return address that she believed she had seen on the package and punched it into Google Maps. It was an address in Indiana. She went to Google Street View and deduced it was a mansion that existed just outside of town. She began feeling slightly silly, pushing the camera in to get better angles of seeing the property because she was not an investigator. She was just a girl that unloaded trucks so she could one day be an artist. This was none of her business, but for whatever reason, it became her business the moment she was chosen. Alina had to step out of her own shoes and into those of an investigator. She seriously thought to stop, but when she looked at the coin laying on the table, it filled her with obligation. She saw on the front gate that served as a long driveway, the same symbol welded in iron was adorning the mansion. The coin meant something, if nothing else, but she wasn't ready to comprehend it as of yet. She tried to remember exactly where the package was going, but that part of the equation eluded her. Then came the thought, what happened if she did in fact find something? What was the next move? What part did she have to play in all this? Alina settled it. She looked into this one last thing, and after that, whatever she found, it was out of her hands, it was beyond her. If a ghost chose her to be her champion, then she had picked incorrectly. If she wanted her to paint her portrait, on the other hand, then fine. She was uniquely qualified to do that. In an odd twist of fate, she looked at the address she recalled and found it was that of an artist in Ohio known for his sculpture. If it were possible for Alina to become more intrigued by the situation, she certainly had been. Other than a few pieces online, he was not a prolific artist. He had just enough pieces that the internet found him amusing, but not enough to have any true notoriety. She closed her laptop after she found out that information. If she could get this information this easily, then the cops would have done so as well, at the very least. She didn't need to be any more a part of any of this than she was. The cops called Alina sporadically over a few months, but she stuck to her guns and didn't tell them anything. If they were having this much trouble figuring out what was happening at either of the addresses labeled on the steamer trunk, then it stood to reason they hadn't solved the case as of yet. But this was not her problem. In a perfect world, the girl would end up being okay and it would all have been a bad dream or a misunderstanding. But unfortunately, that was not the world she lived in.
Look for part 2 of Girl in the Box.